Good morning. Let's just give people a couple of, just 1 minute or so. Thanks. Well, hello again. Good morning and welcome to Financial Economics. This is a very unusual situation we find ourselves in. So first of all, I hope you're all staying safe and healthy. We not only have the coronavirus pandemic to worry about, we also have to worry about the safety of our cities. So I wish you all the very best and hope you're staying safe and healthy. So once again, welcome to Financial Economics. Let's go straight to the syllabus. All right. So first of all, my name is Rajiv Bhattacharya. That's my email address, rbhatt10@jhu.edu. Email is by far the best way of staying in touch with me. I check my emails on a very, very regular basis. And I expect you to check your emails at least once a day. Expect, not a suggestion, not a recommendation. I expect you to do so. The lectures, we will see how it goes. For on-site lectures, they were supposed to be from 10 a.m. to 1:10 p.m. Given that we'll have very little interactions, and most importantly, the interactions are non-mandatory during the actual lectures. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to speak with my colleagues, and if you have any suggestions, please let me know in terms of maybe potentially getting the recording to you before this time. So if you have blocked out this time, you can use it for your purposes. One thing that I have been advised by my colleagues is when you're straight away just doing a lecture without any of the interactions that a class usually goes along, it takes much less time. So I'm expecting to really be done by noon every day. So most importantly is the office hours. I think they are an integral part of your learning, and not only your learning, but also in terms of understanding what's going on. And we will make that happen through office hours. Please email me and we can set up a time to talk. So some general statements about this course, actually a little bit about me. Let me just pull up my firm's website. So I'm the president of Washington Finance and Economics. I did my PhD in 1995 from the University of Rochester. Since then, I have been doing both research and teaching, and also a lot of consulting. So I call them the three pillars of my professional life. They are what have worked pretty well in terms of my research and my consulting inform my teaching. My teaching inspires my research and consulting. And most importantly, probably for you, my consulting keeps my teaching and research real. So these past 12 months have been the most productive of my research career. So, first of all, there's this book on options and market efficiency, which is also your textbook. This paper, Objective Measures of Market Efficiency, Application to Securities Class Actions and Valuations, it has received a lot of attention from my academic as well as practitioner colleagues because of its very specific applications. Then an option theoretic approach to market efficiency, which we are going to talk about later on when we get to options. This here is a relatively older paper, but it still has a lot of importance to financial economics. And this paper on a structural model, a structural approach, is still under review. And like happens with lots of these papers, it'll take a while for it to be published. As I mentioned, I love my teaching. I love doing my research, and I do my consulting because without my consulting, I would not be able to make sure my consulting, that my teaching and research are actually real and actually mean a lot. Anyway, so enough about me. In an on-site course, I would usually ask you to talk a little bit about yourselves and what you're hoping to get out of this course, because this is not an undergraduate course. This is an advanced graduate course at a top university. So my objective always is to treat you like adults unless you prove to me that you don't deserve to be treated as such. And I hope that's not going to happen. I hope, not only hope, I know that's not going to happen. But there are some exceptions that happen occasionally and which are very disappointing. But on the whole, you all are a fabulous group of people, and I'm positive that we will continue to interact in a very, very professional manner throughout this course. So general statements, this is a quantitative and extremely demanding course. So no, this isn't, if you think you're going to just mosey along and learn everything, know everything, and you're just going to kind of sit here and get the passing grade at the end of it, that's not how this course is going to work. You're going to work very hard. One thing that my students, I've been teaching for 25 years, so I've taught over 3,000 students, and the teaching evaluations invariably come down to something like this. I've never worked as hard as I did in Prof B's class, but I never learned as much from any other course either. So that's how it's going to be. That's how my value proposition is very straightforward. I'm going to teach you the skills and the way of thinking, most importantly, that will enable you to join, if you want to so do, a financial firm, let's say Goldman Sachs, and hit the ground running, to ask all the right questions and to pick up where you left off. And so, that's going to be my target throughout. Let me continue, and I will walk you through the rest of it. We will also apply econometrics to financial markets. Now, keep in mind, this is not an econometrics course, so I'm not going to get into the details of the econometrics. Hold on a second. Yeah, so we're not going to get into details of the econometrics. If you're so interested, I can definitely walk you through at some point of time. I will challenge you very hard and put a lot of effort into helping you succeed. As I said, it's a very difficult course, but my objective is not to throw you at the deep end of the swimming pool and you sink or swim. That's not how I'm going to work very hard to make you succeed. But how much work am I going to put in? It depends on how much you put in. So thanks, Sandra, that I like to tell my students, if you put in X amount of work, I'll work 5 times X with you. So that's how what you get out of an advanced graduate course is a direct function of what you put into it. And that's how we are going to deal with it. This is, if you put in the effort, you're going to find this course to be the most value-added course that you've ever taken, ever. That's not my assertion. It's on the basis of having taught over 3,000 students and the feedback I have received from my students over 25 years. Memorization of jargon is not what you should be taking from this course, okay? One thing that I've learned, having worked in the real world, having been the managing director at a top consulting firm, is that, thinking very quickly is sometimes important, but much more important is thinking deeply. So if, for instance, you're not quite sure about a jargon, don't use it. You will be found out, and it will come and hurt you horribly if you're found out that you were using a jargon without knowing what it means. It really destroys your credibility altogether. Jargon is not the objective. Thinking it through, looking at the data, analyzing it correctly, all of those things are what are the deliverables at the end of the course. Please read the Wall Street Journal every day. Every day. This is not a suggestion, it's a requirement. You need to read the Wall Street Journal every day. This is not a course in math or applied math even. This is a course in financial economics. So we are going to deal with real world problems. So you need to be able to read the Wall Street Journal every day. And if you have any questions about a particular event, then either raise it during class or send me an email or send your email. I've sent all of you emails, so you have each other's email addresses. You can email everybody and we can have a discussion going. So last semester in the spring, for instance, when we for the same course, financial economics, we had this very unlikely situation of futures prices of crude oil becoming negative. And so we had a very lively discussion around it. And we discussed how under what very unlikely situations that can arise, but it is definitely something that can happen. So we talked about this. Those are the kinds of real life problems this course is about. When you bring to your class, whether it's online or offline, it doesn't matter. You need to bring your presence, your laptop, and your name card to every class, whether it is you're doing it remotely, asynchronously versus if you're being in class, you're following along with it. You need to absolutely be engaged with your name and your laptop. Please check your email an hour before each class. If there are any announcements, if something is being delayed or something is not working out, I will let you know in an email about an hour. So once again, these are not suggestions. You need to check your email at least once a day. And secondly, you need to check your email an hour before each class in case there is any announcements to be taken. Okay. The readings, the required readings, the major textbook is this Options and Market Efficiency, a Big Data Approach, my book that came out just a few months ago. Then the required reading, Wall Street Journal, you need to get, right now the Wall Street Journal, if you read through it, it's really not good news that comes screaming at us, which is really unfortunate, but it is what it is. So you need to get a subscription to a Wall Street Journal. And there are some very good student discounts that you can get. And so these are the required readings for this course. Recommended readings, this Bodie, Kane, and Marcus, it's been around for a long time. This is a link to that book. It's called Investment by Bodie, Kane, and Marcus. Then this course, the next, the Raghu Sundaram and Sanjeev Das on derivatives, it's a bit more advanced than we would like for this course, but it's a very, very, very good book. Raghu Sundaram used to be my professor in graduate school. He is now the dean of at the Stern School of Business at New York University. He has actually let me use many of his slides, and you will see later on when we go to derivatives that I acknowledge his work as well. So this book of his and his co-author is a very good book. But it's one thing to keep in mind that it's a bit more advanced than we are going to use for this particular course of financial economics, but we will refer to it from time to time. Sundaresan's book on fixed income markets, we will not actually spend much time on fixed income markets in this fixed income securities in this course. There are advanced courses on fixed income securities in your program that I would strongly urge you to consider. But this is something for those of you who are interested. You need to have this, to look at this book when you can. The last book on this list is by Larry Harris, who is a former chief economist of the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. This is a very old book. It's a 2003 book, and I've emailed Larry a number of times saying, hey, it's time to bring out a new version, because this really is a fabulous introduction to actual financial markets, the nitty-gritty detail that we often have to abstract away from for an academic course. Later on in this course, I will have one of my former students come to you and present to you on things that you learn at work, and how things that you learn at work and things that you learn at university are often very complementary. And it's in the combination of those sets of skills and sets of ways of looking at things that make you a great financial economist. This, for a long time, anytime one of my former students or mentees started work on Wall Street, this used to be my welcome to finance gift to them. This is how highly I recommend this book. This is one of those books. It's always on my chest, on my shelves behind me, and I look it up whenever I need any particular specific information, the nitty-gritty details that we often move away from in academics. But as I said, it's a pretty old book, so have that caveat there. All right, this is our tentative schedule. And I emphasize the word tentative because this can change as we go along. So over this first 2 weeks, we will have an overview of financial economics, find out some of the fundamental, the theories behind it, and look at some actual data. How does an investor maximize all of that stuff? We kind of get the overview of finance in the first couple of weeks. On Tuesday, we are going to have a collage, so to speak, on institutions. First, I will go and talk about institutions, financial institutions in general, with a focus on US markets, US institutions. And then I'll have two former students of mine who will talk about European financial markets. And then we'll have a different set of two former students who will talk about Asian capital markets. So Tuesday, June 16th will be a very, very informative course, informative class for you to learn actual details. And then we will jump straight into equities. Equities still are the biggest subset of financial securities. So naturally, we are going to spend some time on equities, and a lot of the stuff that we talk in the overview, we'll find direct applications to equities simply because they are the most well studied. On Tuesday, July 7th, we will have a midterm exam, which will be, okay, I'll get into the details of that in just a minute. Then we'll have, just following the midterm, we'll have one class on fixed income securities, just one class, because as I mentioned, we're not going to get into too much detail, but those of you who are interested, there are a bunch of advanced courses on specializing in fixed income securities in your program. So you should think about taking them if you are so interested. Then we'll have 3, maybe 2.5 classes on derivatives. And the reason for this huge emphasis on derivatives is that's where a lot of the action in today's financial markets are. And so, good or bad, that's where the action is. And so we're going to spend a lot of time to make sure you understand derivatives. I often find people, and people who ought to know better will use things like stocks and stock options interchangeably when they are very different beasts. And you need to be able to understand the roles that stocks play and fixed income securities play, foreign exchange plays, and a derivative that's lying on top of those underlying securities, what roles they play in finance. So we will spend a lot of time on derivatives. And then foreign exchange and market efficiency. And the market efficiency, because a lot of my research is on market efficiency and on options. So we're going to bring to you I'll take you right to the borders, to the frontiers of thinking in finance. Of course, I won't necessarily expect you to do all the heavy duty econometric work that I do in my research or consulting. But for those of you who are interested, you should be able to then understand and be able to apply them as you want to, if you so desire. So that's the objective. I have posted, actually, let me quickly walk you through your Blackboard site. All right, so this is your Blackboard site. You have the syllabus here. We will, I might have to update it after seeing how today's class goes, because this is the first time I'm teaching a fully online course. So there's going to be some learning from you, from my colleagues, and from our experience, how it goes. So if you have any suggestions, please do let me know at your earliest convenience. You will not be only be doing me a favor, you'll also be doing yourself and your classmates a favor by speaking out as soon as possible, okay? Look, I am fully committed to delivering to you an absolutely world-class course. The objective is to have the best course that this can possibly be. It takes a lot of work, but that's what my goal is, my objective is, and I can only ask for your help in order to make it happen. So the lecture notes are there on Blackboard, organized, as you can see, by various topics. You will find that I will not go through many of these actual slides. And the objective, therefore, of these lecture notes is for you to have them printed out or stored in your files mostly for reference. Anytime you say, hey, what was the Black-Scholes thing again? Go straight to this source of references for you, whether you have it in printout form or in digital form. You have them ready for you anytime you need information about those. So I will refer to it. I'll go through many of these slides, but I will also not go through some of those slides, and that brings us to these work files. There are about 40 odd Excel files, and these are all were created for this course. These were not, I created all of them. These were not things that were given to me. We will go through everything, every one of these files in class. So for instance, Black-Scholes, we'll do the theory, but we'll immediately actually derive Black-Scholes. If you, when we see, if you write, 21, 22, 23, 24, we will actually go through, in particular number 24, we will go through the derivations of Black-Scholes with actual data. All right. Similarly, one of the fundamental results of options is that early exercise on a put option on a stock that does not pay dividends and does not have any splits, and for such a stock, an call option is such that early exercise is suboptimal. But we will see, we will actually deal with that with actual data. Okay, so we will prove the math, we will show the mathematical results. We will not spend too much time on deriving them, which would be if we were doing a full course in derivatives. But we will actually go through what the implications of those are with actual data. And right, starting from next week, we are going to look at, when we talk about utility maximization and diversification by investors, we will actually go through actual portfolios of actual stocks with to see how their optimal investments change with different parameters and so on. Okay, so we will get our hands dirty with actual data. All right, so anytime when people, sometimes it's so easy for some people to say, oh, that's just theory, that doesn't work in practice. Well, send them to my course. We are actually working with real data. So, none of that criticism really applies here, because we, of course, everything, there are limitations, and I'll be very upfront with limitations of any of our work right up front. But having said that, we are actually working with actual data, with real data in this course throughout. So, so these are the work files in there. I put in a number of references, which I will talk about during the course of this course. Some of them more than others, and I probably will keep adding on to this throughout this course. All right, back to the syllabus. So data. So as I mentioned, we're going to work with actual data. Where are we going to get all these actual data from? So by far the most important source for data in the academic world is Wharton Research and Data Services, affectionately known as WORDS. And this here is the website. I'll just walk you through a couple of examples. So in particular, let's look at, so if you click on that, if you go back to the syllabus, so your ID is H640SU20. Please go along with me. There's no point in your just looking at it and nodding along, because you will be, this is a critical part of learning, is be getting familiar with various data sets in finance and actually being able to work with them. All right, so so you need to be able to download the data. You will be repeatedly tested on that in your exams. So you need to get extremely familiar with them. So H for Hopkins, 640 for the course number, SU summer 20. All right, so H64 SU20, that's your ID. So this might look different on your screen, and that's absolutely fine. And the password is Finance 2020 with 1 instead of I. So F1 NANCE 2020. F1 NANCE 2020. All right, it often works up. So here is the dashboard for words. I personally find it more useful to go to get data. So CRISP here, which is the data set which is for securities prices, by far the platinum standard for securities prices. And I'll tell you why in just a minute. So if you click on that, and it will prompt you. We might have to go it again. It's clunky, but it is what it is. So stock security files, please go along with it yourselves. So you can go monthly stock file, daily stock file. Let's just do daily stock file. And let's say we want to do it, we want to get all data for Apple. So let's say 1930 01 01 to last date for which we have data 2019 12/31, and ticker, let's say Apple APL. Now one thing too, you can see here that the last date for which we actually have data in CRISP is the end of 2019, and we are already in June. So 5 full months have gone by and we don't have data for it. And that's the plus and the minus. The plus is simply that data on CRISP are extremely reliable, completely clean. And I mean, I often joke that's the reason I went into finance, is because I don't like cleaning up data. I like working with clean data. I like actually doing the econometric work. I like doing the thinking instead of cleaning up data. So that's one of the advantages of working with CRISP. The data are completely clean. And I'll show you in just a minute, if you want more recent data, then you have to use other data sources, which may not be as clean. And also another big advantage of CRISP is instead of downloading just for a particular ticker, you can, for instance, go down here, search the entire database. And my research and my consulting, for instance, is heavily big data. I do my work for every single US traded security for every year in every single market over the last 30 years. That's kind of the way my research and consulting work. So I cannot just go and download it for each single security one at a time. So I'll have to download search the entire database. And so that's what, but in our case, let's say we download and for ticker Apple. And I'm just showing this as an example of what you can do. Let's say what are the fields you need to download? And price, holding period return. Let's just say we download these. You want to tell it what format you want to download it at. So Excel spreadsheet. It's a very small file, so you don't need to compress. Then you get to the date format. Try to use consistency is absolutely important. So I'm going to consistently use the American date convention of month, day, year. That's, I'm going to consistently use that. For your assessments, for midterms, everything that you submit to me, please use the American date convention, okay? In your work with others and etc., it's your business. You can do anything you want. But for this course, please stick with that. Submit query. This shouldn't take too long because now it's because it's a small data set. Okay. So when this comes up, you need to download it. Let's create a new folder, call it Finance Summer 2020. Let's call it APL Daily Data. So this is what the data for Apple are going to look like for this entire period that we have downloaded data for. All right. We're going to look at all these data in much more detail later. But this is just, I'm just showing you as an example of data that can be downloaded. This is how it's going to look like. And as you can see, the last price of last year was $293.65. These here are the daily returns, which we will talk about in just a few minutes, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so that's an example of data that you can download from. So that's one. let's see what else can. Another example that I would like to show you is once again, let's say get data, go to TAQ, T-A-Q. That's trades and quotes. Okay, very informative. And let's just look at um, let's say we begin, we want trades and quotes during market time. So 0930 ending 16, filter observations by timestamp. Let's say we take it for the last day. Now these data sets are huge, okay? Each data is huge. So you have to be extremely careful with how you are working with them. So it's very hard to do automated stuff with them. And so, you know, it is what it is. You just have to get used to it. So if you have any suggestions on which, if you have any favorite stocks, speak now. Okay, let's say we take Tesla. And let's say we take the bid price, ask price, and national BBO indicator. Actually, you know what? Let's just get the bid exchange and ask exchange as well. Now, let's say we download it as a comma delimited text. Now, one of the things that you will learn is that in my research and consulting, I do almost all my programming in SAS and some in Stata. Because Excel is just not good enough for those huge data sets, 24 terabytes of data, for instance, that I handle on a regular basis. So, so this is not a course in programming, so we're not going to do any SAS or Stata for that matter. But I'm going to get you started on and looking at various data sets that we can look at. So let's look at the TAC data. All right, so as I mentioned, this has come through as a zip file because these files typically are huge. So I'm going to download this zip file. Go to downloads, finance summer 2020, then extract this file. So this gives you on that last day of 2019, 12/31, the various, you know what, I'm going to, not sure what it did. Let's re-download this. Yeah, let's, all right, while that is downloading it, let me go back to the syllabus. Well, I actually want to show you one more download. So let's, all right. All right. So this here is the date field. I'm going to increase the size of this because it's hard to see otherwise. So column width, let's make them all 15. So as you can see, we have downloaded everything, all the quotes for 2019, 12/31. So December 31st of 2012-13. These are the timestamps for each quote. Bids and asks, we are going to discuss them in detail in just a few minutes. And the NAT BBO indicator, don't worry about it for now. This is, I'll explain to you when we do bids and quotes what the NAT BBO stands for NB, National Best Bid and Offer, whether it is the best among all the exchanges, whether that's an indicator of that. Let's not worry about it for now. But this example is basically what this does is at every point in this during this particular day, anytime any order is placed, any quote that any of the market makers place for Tesla stock, this is, as you can see, for Tesla, this is listed. So this, as you can see, it's a, look at the number of observations we have. 429,000. So almost 500,000 quotes were placed on that particular stock just on that day. All right. So every single quote is registered on this quote database. There is also a similar database on trades, which is far less populated because the quotes are, in a sense, cheap talk. You can make the quote and then you can disappear and come back again. So this is the quotes data. Let's close out of it. And another data set that we will use a lot of in this course is the option metrics data. So get data, option metrics. So options, let's say we go to option prices, and let's say we use for let's say we do it for the last month of 2018, the last half month of that. Let's say we download and pick your company. Walmart, WMT, and this is a ticker, okay? You can various filters you can put in there. And what we are looking for in this case, we'll see later. We'll do a lot of work with this, the highest bid ask, lowest volume, all right? And Excel spreadsheet, no need to zip. We'll follow the US date convention, submit query. Okay, while it is doing that, let me walk you through some of the other data sources that we have. The Wall Street Journal is obviously a very important data source, especially for investors who are not professional investors or institutional investors, people who are interested in financial markets but don't necessarily subscribe to the very high-end databases of all kinds. So the Wall Street Journal Markets is a very good source of information for this stuff. So for instance, always is, you should start your day by looking at all market data. And as you can see, this is, how has the Dow Jones done today? From, look at it from the beginning of the market till today, it's 10:44, just a bit past, and you can see that the market started at 25,602, went down a bit, and then has climbed up quite a lot during the course of just today. And this is the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is still the average that is used for most work, just simply because it has only 30 firms. It's very easy to calculate, and historically, that's what we have been doing. And we're going to talk about these indices later on. Similarly, S&P 500. This here is as you can see, this is the S&P 500 for, look, if you want to look at how the S&P 500, that's another, the Standard & Poor's 500, the index of the top 500, well, top using it a bit loosely. We're going to explain to all of these things later, how they have done over the years. Over the last 3 years, as we can see, it had a peak, and then, it moves up, and then, this is the Trump presidency, and climbed really very high in the early 2020, until then we saw that disastrous drop a couple of months ago. And, since then it's climbed up, but not back to its normal, but it has climbed up. So Wall Street Journal is very good for those things. If you, if you want to look at major international stock indexes, Wall Street Journal. So for instance, if you're interested in Asian markets, you can see that the China markets have, well, there is China and there's Hong Kong. So China, there are 3 major market indices: H-share, Shanghai Composite, and Shenzhen Composite. And one of my former students, Wenli, is going to talk to you in detail about these markets. And she has also worked in the Hong Kong market. So we're going to do the Hang Seng there as well. So it gives you, so for instance, if you want to look at the China Shenzhen Composite, then over the last 5 days, you can see how the markets have moved for the Shenzhen Composite. If I'm mispronouncing the name, please pardon me. But if you want to look at it for over 3 years, then this composite index of leading Chinese, mostly tech firms, then you can see that there has been significant movement. And it has, if you look at it, the impact of the coronavirus seems somewhat muted in this Shenzhen index. Things that you can also want to look at is futures. So for instance, if you want to look at gold prices, so the gold continuous contract is, as you can, it is now, it's currently the latest price at 10:37 a.m., just 10 minutes delayed, is $1,753.70 per troy ounce. And we're going to talk later about what the distinction between, and how to measure these numbers and what it means. And as you can see, over the last 5 days, there has been a steady increase. What does it mean over the last 3 years? Well, there has also been an increase. Gold is a funny commodity. Because it is considered a storehouse of value in times of volatility. Historically, gold and the US dollar, that's where the investors tend to focus on in times of uncertainty. So that's something to keep in mind. Let's go back to our options data. So we had downloaded for the last half month of December for ticker Walmart. Let's see what the data look like. So let's save it as WMT options 2018.1215 to 2018.12.31. So later on, we'll do a lot of work with these in detail. So one of the things that you will notice is that these are all these are all American options, and we'll talk about the difference between American options and European options. And interestingly enough, in the US, all options on US traded equity are all European options, whereas options on stock indices, for instance, are European as well as American. So it's, you just have to be very careful. Options are very complicated things, and so you need to be very careful about how you deal with options. There's just so much data that needs to go on. The date of this data, what's the date at which the option expires, then subtract those two to get to the time to expiry. This is the strike price times 1,000. In order to get the strike price, you have to divide this by 1,000. These here, the highest closing bid and the lowest closing ask, you take the midpoint of those to get an approximation of the best price for that particular day, the volume of that particular option contract, and so on and so forth. Okay, these are option metrics data for Walmart for those particular days. Now, this is great as historical data. But one thing that you will see immediately as this is daily data. Okay, so far I've showed you from words, we've shown you crisp data, which is daily data for each day. Then we showed you TAC data, which is intraday, that is data for within a particular day. So as we saw, there were 500,000 observations for Tesla just for that particular day, 12/31/2019. Yeah, so intraday data is far more intensive than daily data are. So option metrics data are daily data. So then your question, of course, is okay. Then what about actual data points were within a particular day? That's a perfect entree onto the next source of data that I want to show you. It's the Cboe data. So let's go to cboe.com. Go to quotes and data, quotes dashboard, and let's say do Apple again, I suppose. Click on options chain. And this here is data, actual options that are being traded at this particular point of time, June 2nd, 2020 at 10:52 Eastern. Okay, it's delayed by a little bit, but that's in order to get the exact to the minute quote, you need to subscribe to higher end databases, but this here is available to us, and we'll talk about later in what kinds of options at the money and so on. This here is the data for on the left, as I said, this is called the options chain. On the left are call options, which are the right but obligation, but not the obligation to buy. And puts are the rights, but not the obligations to sell. And this here gives you that for a strike price on Apple security at the strike price of $370.50, this is the bid for that option. This is the ask, $6.15 is the ask for that option. And for a put, which is the right but not the obligation to sell, the bid is $1.95 and the ask is $1.97. These are intraday data for options, which we will use later on quite extensively. All right. Now, so let's make sure we understand the hierarchy of all these data sets. Wharton Research and Data Services are the platinum standard for academic work. And also in consulting or in the high-end Wall Street work, Words is essential. It's really hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of data that you get as part of your tuition. It's a fabulously good deal that you can get all this data by subscribing to this. This is not because there are a couple of pluses and minuses. First thing is like CRISP, for instance, right? It's cleaned, so you can use it and it's easily downloadable. You can do a lot of hardcore big data work with Words data. Part of that cleaning is the data. You cannot get yesterday's data from Words because it takes a while to clean and process the data. All right. So very expensive, but it's part of your tuition. This is what we're going to use over and over again for our purposes. The Wall Street Journal is the source of data for people who are not regular investors but want to keep on top of the market. So Wall Street Journal. The problem with the Wall Street Journal data is that they're not downloadable as part of your regular subscription. So we looked at those data, but if you want to do your own analyses on them, which we would like to do, you cannot. Cboe data, they are downloadable, but these are specially for options. They actually have quite a wide variety that but we will use them primarily for options and so on. The source of data for industry practitioners is the Bloomberg Terminal, which you probably have heard at some stage or the other of these two huge screens with those typewriter with all these funny buttons and all that. So Bloomberg Terminal, you actually have access to a Bloomberg Terminal during the semester and when normal classes on site are functioning. But because of the coronavirus right now, you do not have access to the Bloomberg Terminal. That is part of your eligibility as far as this course is concerned. This is very unfortunate, but that is just a statement that you will in the future when you're working, if you're working at Goldman Sachs, you will become very familiar with the Bloomberg Terminal, and it's part of what we do in this course. But because of this coronavirus induced great shutdown, we won't have access to the Bloomberg Terminal, which you have on campus. All right. Okay, so going back to this data set, I'm going to close out of it. So this is the data set that you can see on your screen is what we obtained from daily data from option metrics, which we'll work with actual data. We can, in CBOE is daily intraday data of options that we are working on as we go along. All right, let's take a quick break. All right, so welcome back. So I just got an email from GA about the fact that this is an inconvenient time. I appreciate that. I understand that. I really liked the very thoughtful and polite way in which Jay phrased it rather. And I will respond to that. Let me give it some thought. Okay, and I'll speak with some of my colleagues and try to figure out a way it works for everybody, so it doesn't disadvantage anybody. Because the idea of fairness is to not disadvantage anybody, and so we'll try to work on that. Okay, all right. So one thing that next source of information that we get a lot from is Yahoo Finance, and so let's just look at Apple again, and it gives you all the data for Apple, with a little bit of a delay, but up to the day. If you want to download data, that's interesting. So let's say we can look at Max. As you can see, the Apple data, it's the screen just gets really odd very quickly because of how much the increases have happened since it first went public a long time ago. So if you look at historical data, and this here is the time period. As you can see, if you want historical data all the way, you can click on Max, apply. And the great thing about Yahoo is that it allows you to download the data, which go to this, and let's say we download it. Now it will download it as a .csv, which is a comma separated values file. which then can be converted, which you can open through Excel. You just have to be very careful as to how you do it. So this is the, hold on for just a second. So this is the Yahoo, the data that you get from Apple, from Yahoo for Apple in this particular case. And it starts from the date on which it was traded, when it first went public, and you have these various prices which are in dollars. Now, the thing to keep in mind is these prices are all adjusted prices. The prices that we saw when we downloaded from CRISP, those were not adjusted prices. All right, and what exactly does adjusted mean? We'll talk about that in just a minute when we go through the slides on returns and so on. All right, so that's a very useful thing from Yahoo so now Yahoo, if you can go through the data, and you can see it gives you data 6/1, June 1st until yesterday. But it's not cleaned in the way that CRISP data are. So you just have to be careful about using it. But on the other hand, if you want data from 3 months ago, there's no point looking at CRISP because it hasn't, the cleaning hasn't happened yet. Those are the kind of, we don't live in a perfect world. And one thing that you learn when you deal with, get your hands dirty with actual data is that you realize that things are not perfect, and you can have to do the best that you can. And learning to live with that is one of the most important kind of transitions one makes to being an empiricist when working with actual data. Okay, it's a challenge. Instead of just putting our hands up and saying, "Oh, I don't have that data, so I don't have to do this assignment." Well, no, it doesn't work that way. You're given a problem. Your boss says, do the capital asset pricing model for Apple, and you figure out where the data are. And this is your advanced graduate course. You figure things out, and that's what you realize. There will be missing data. There will be data that are clearly measuring something different than what you thought they were, and so on and so forth. You need to look at them very carefully in order to do good finance work. All right. So this is Yahoo. Another thing that we often will use Yahoo for is if you want to, for instance, get the the index. So this here, S&P 500. So as you can see, the S&P 500, it's if you want latest data on how the market's been doing, you can actually go to S&P 500 on Yahoo, go to the historical data, and once again, if you want to do it for the entire period, max, daily. If you want to do it monthly, you can do all kinds of frequencies that you are interested in. Then you download it. Okay. The volume is not a particularly meaningful when you're talking about an index. So we're going to delete that. And these are all in dollar terms. Okay. So these are all, you can keep all of this going forward. All right. So Yahoo Finance is a great kind of interim source of getting work done. You want something that you need done for a quick work, Yahoo is great. It's not very useful if you want to do my kind of work where I do it for all stocks over over 25-year period in every single US market. That kind of big data work, Yahoo Finance is not good for, because downloading it, you have to go stock by stock, unless you want to write a Python code. and in which case, more power to you. It is great things that you can do, and automation is something that I'll talk about later. Is automating these things is not only in terms of saving time and resources, it is also about reducing human error. Okay, so that's why automation is a very, very useful thing to do, and I'll talk about this later in the context of your assignments as well. So Yahoo Finance, great stuff. Google Finance used to be good. Unfortunately, not so great anymore. The firm Google has pretty much given up on Google Finance. This is stuff that is there from, there. They keep some things in there. It's really not that great. And in particular, it doesn't allow you to download anything. So yeah, it is what it is. It's not even close to being as good as or useful, and the firm doesn't really care. Okay, the HK exchange is a very good source of data for securities, for financial securities that are traded on the Hong Kong exchange. And as I mentioned to you earlier, we will have some of my students coming and talking to you about Asian capital markets, and they will spend a lot of time on the Hang Seng Index and stocks that are traded on the Hong Kong exchange. So okay, Tencent. Let's look at Tencent. All right. So if you want to look at Tencent, how its stock has gone, you can look at that on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and you can see how it has changed over the last 10 years. It's very good to get this visual. Downloading it is much more problematic, but in terms of looking at not only its stock, but also derivatives written on that stock are also options and futures. Also, you get data on just one dashboard. Also has the company profile. It's one of the things that we often find out that markets in China, Japan, or India, because they did not have the history of integration with world markets for quite a while, they have often leapfrogged some of the measures that are available in these Chinese markets or Indian markets are actually superior to what is often available on Wall Street or in Europe. And those are just fascinating to see. And when we do 2 weeks from today, we will actually look at some of the fundamental institutional differences between Europe, America, Asia, and to get a sense for what this is about. Okay. ZTE, as you can see, I love looking at ZTE, and one of the reasons is my wife actually has done a lot of work for ZTE. She's quite an expert on ZTE's profits and losses and their stock prices and their annual reports, and so in the family we kind of like looking at ZTE. I mean, frankly, I'm a huge fan of everything that firm has been able to achieve in the past few years. It's one of those marquee firms. Hold on for a second. All right, let's just look at this year for ZTE. As you can see, there was this peak February 24th, and there was a bit of a slide here, and it's not really recovered, gone back to its older peak. But that's the nature of the beast, given that it's such a such a firm that is uniquely enmeshed within the world economy. So the markets being affected in other parts of the world will have an impact on ZTE much more than it will for a firm that is uniquely focused on Chinese markets. So, okay, so that's the HKEX database. I'm going to close out of some of these. One thing that I forgot to show you earlier, let me show the Federal Reserve is what we call FRED. Because they're a friend. Okay, so the Federal Reserve of St. Louis is a phenomenal source of very good data. So, and it's for, let's say later on we'll do Treasury data. So these are fixed income securities. So let's say we take Treasury constant maturity 1 month. Okay, so this here is let's say we look at the 1 month Treasury constant maturity data. You can see what the returns are, and during this course, this is past the Great Recession when the Treasury rates were close to zero, and we'll do these Treasury rates are going to come back to work with us over and over again throughout this course. And Fred is a fabulous source of information on this, and you can see, you can click on download, you can download it, and we'll talk to you a bit more about things. The Fred is a bit of a their data are not as clean as we would like it to be. It's not unclean really, but you need to go through a few steps to make sure everything is working right. It's just a matter of getting familiar with them. And this is not just about this. If you, for instance, want to look at unemployment data, so let's say we want to look at unemployment rate. And since this is a very interesting chart when we look at it for the US unemployment rate. Since we started tracking it just around the end of the Second World War, we have had some pretty high unemployment rates, right? In the 1980, 10.4 in the Great Recession, and look at where we are now. I mean, it's so unprecedented, the turmoil that we find ourselves in. And so this is look at the unemployment rate. And that obviously has enormous implications to capital markets. And we will to financial markets. And we will deal with all of these as we go along. All right. So that's for now, in terms of data sets that we will use. I'll be downloading much more data as we go along, and we'll walk through exact details. You need to be able to download these data sets. You need to be able to do the analyses we discussed, and I will post sample tests, midterm and final exam on Blackboard. And once I get a better sense of how this course is going to fully work out, so which I hope within the next couple of days, I will post sample midterm and sample exam, and we'll take it from there. Okay, software. We're going to use Excel extensively in this course, a lot. Okay. Now, as I mentioned to you, this is not a course in financial econometrics. This is not a course like on big data and finance, like I have taught before. This is a course on financial economics, and that's what Excel means to the end of understanding that. And I will not test you on your Excel proficiency. And this is not a course on Excel. Okay. So, but you do need to have Excel solver, add-in, and the analysis tool pack installed and tested on your computer. You should have it by today. If not, please have it by next class. And you need to be able to walk through with me everything that I'm doing in class, with you doing it on your laptop at home or at where you are. There is absolutely no point in just looking at my videos and nodding along, because that's just not going to achieve anything. This is a course where you get your hands dirty with data, all right? Because this is not a course in abstract mathematics. This is not a course in theoretical statistics. This is a course on financial economics, and that's what you're going to get, financial economics. So you need to have those installed. If you have any questions about Excel, about the use of Excel, please contact me. But if it's about Excel,
about why your Excel is not working on your computer, there's no point in asking me. I'm not an expert on Excel. That's an IT question. So please contact Hopkins IT desk. In particular, Alfonso Romero is a very, very helpful guy. I've found him incredibly responsive. He is just a fabulous guy. So please contact him, and he will get you sorted with any Excel specific questions that you might have. All right, grading. So there will be a take-home midterm exam that is due Tuesday, July 7th. I will email the exam to you the Friday before that. And similarly, the final exam will be on Tuesday, August 18th. It's due Tuesday, August 18th. And I will send it to you the Friday before that around noon. Okay. Each of these cases, the take-home midterm exam, I'll email you the questions the Friday before that around noon. You have 2 hours for each of these exams. So each is a short answer questions, closed book, but you can have 2 sides of a letter size paper with notes. You can use your laptop for computations, but not for finding answers to questions. And you will submit your answers online in one Excel workbook, which I will give you exactly how to name it, because we're going to automate it. Because if you don't all name it exactly the same format, we cannot automate it, which leads to all kinds of errors. And one thing I don't want is for one of you to not follow instructions and put everybody else's grades in jeopardy by doing so. So we really need everybody to follow instructions exactly. If not, as happened last semester, people who don't follow instructions will lose significant points. Okay. So 2 hours for exam. So let's say send you the exam to you, email the exam to you on the Friday before the exam is due. You can pick any 2 hours you want to do your exam. So pick 2 hours, take the exam, and we will, and you email it to me when you're ready. Okay, but you can only take 2 hours. All the rules follow. These are not group projects. You're not to disclose or discuss with anybody in your class or outside about your question. And those will be hardcore quantitative questions, which you need to answer in the context of that particular question. One thing that I take pride in putting a lot of effort into getting my students' exams exactly right. So, if you decide to go search on the internet for finding answers to your questions, best of luck with that. You won't have any luck with it, because I put a lot of effort into getting my exams just right. You're not going to get it. And moreover, it's wrong. It's unethical. But even if you do, one thing that you learn from in my class, the only way to get a good grade in my class is by thinking really hard and working very hard. Those are the 2 ways you can get good grades. Okay, so 50% for the final exam and 40% for the midterm exam. Unsupported assertions will be penalized, and substantial partial credit will be given. Okay, so if you find yourself, making a mistake at the very end, one computational error, you lose some points, but not much. Okay, but if you make an assertion like often people will do. I remember there was one student who made the assertion that the only reason gold's price goes up during a recession is because of liquidity. And I'm like, okay, define liquidity first. And clearly this person had not thought it through, but made an assertion. If you're going to make assertions, then you don't belong in an advanced graduate course at a top university. Okay, anything you say must be backed by facts and logic. Okay, my hunch is, I don't care what your hunch is. Is it factual? Is it based on logic and facts? If it's not based on logic and facts, this is not your course. Okay, that does not need to be on your exam. Does not need to be mentioned in a course or in an email. Okay, this is purely on the basis of facts and logic. That's the entirety of this course. All right, class participation, and I'll address that in just a minute. Participation in class and office hours. For an on-site course, I usually have it at 20%, and I usually have 40% for final exam and 40% for midterm exam. So I brought it down to from 20% to 10% because of the fact that this is online. The class participation is not, we're not quite sure how it's going to work out, and so on. I'm not sure how exactly we're going to, because I got that very thoughtful request about the fact that this timing is very difficult for some people who are in different time zones. So let me have a think about it, and I will get back to you if some changes need to be made on this, which also brings to a question. What I'm going to also keep in mind is to how exactly to model this interaction. In particular, the thing to keep in mind is whether this asynchronous nature of a video. So as I said, I will discuss with my colleagues, I will discuss with the program, and if you have any suggestions, please email them to me as soon as possible. I would like to make sure, well, you can be sure that nobody will be disadvantaged, okay? That is a fundamental promise I make you throughout this course. You might find me strict, but you'll not find me unfair. It is my objective to serve you to the best of my abilities, and I will. I work very hard, and I will applaud people who work hard as well. You will be adequately rewarded. All right. So, all right. With that's as far as this assessment, please, if there are any change, I will update the syllabus on Blackboard, and I will email you an updated syllabus if we do make any changes. Please be on the lookout for it. Okay. Academic integrity. It is absolutely incumbent upon all of us to scrupulously follow every single principle of academic integrity. Violations of academic integrity essentially fall into these categories, each of which is totally unacceptable. Excuse me, plagiarism. When you copy somebody else's work, so for instance, you copy and paste from my paper and put it in your paper without even putting quotes around it or acknowledging me. So that is plagiarism. You can get into serious trouble. If you're going to quote somebody, you need to put it in quotes and say who you're quoting from where. Absolutely, that has to be. Now you can say, oh, okay, how about I just put it in my own words? I take Rajiv Bhattacharya's professor's ideas, but I put it in my own words. That is unacknowledged paraphrasing, and that's also a violation of academic integrity. You're not allowed to do it. Cheating, obviously. Taking exams next to each other and you lean over and copy what the other person wrote. Cheating. Now, when you are given a take-home exam, that is based on the honor code, based on the idea that you will follow the rules completely. So that will be cheating if you discuss between the time you get the exam and by the time you if you discuss with anybody, that will be considered cheating. Okay. Unauthorized collaboration is also cheating. If you're in this particular case, both your assignments are individual assessments. If you collaborate with anybody because we have been specifically told not to, then that is a violation of academic integrity. If you know, in some courses I often make my students do group projects, in which case you are required to collaborate. So in that case, of course, you're going to collaborate. It's the unauthorized part that's critical. Fabrication of data. You know, that's something when you're doing a research project and you are required to do some analyses instead of actually looking at data, you just make up data. That's falsification, that's fabrication, that's, you know, seriously, you can get into severe trouble for it. Facilitating academic dishonesty. You may not cheat yourself, but if you facilitate somebody's cheating, that's a violation of academic integrity as well. Misuse of otherwise valued academic work. So, for instance, you look at a research paper which says that the distribution of IQ is bell-shaped. Okay, and you misuse that to suggest that there is a racist backing to that work, or that this work backs racist application. That is misuse of otherwise valid academic work. So that is a violation of academic integrity as well. Misuse of academic resources. Now, so for instance, the academic resources are, the words data are academic resources. They are meant for academic work. If you use them for your non-academic work, that is a violation of academic integrity. Depriving others of equal access to academic resources. Now, you'd almost say, why is it that even there? Because when I remember back when I was in graduate school, I used to work in the library, and it was very common for pre-medical students to actually hide books in the library from their classmates so that they could not get access to those books. So the hyper competitive nature of that kind of work would often translate into serious academic violations. Okay, now professors and students have little flexibility when it comes to dealing with violations, and this is important, or alleged violations. If you or I suspect any such violations, we are required to follow. You don't have a choice. You have to follow procedures. If you suspect such a violation, you have to inform me immediately. Okay. If you don't inform me immediately of such a suspicion of a potential violation, you will be in violation of academic integrity and will be subject to all relevant sanctions. You say, okay, I didn't, X copied from me, therefore I'm blameless. No, the fact that you let X copy from you is a violation, and both of you will be subjected to all the sanctions. Now, if X copied from you without your permission, that's a different matter and should be reported to me as soon as you find out. Okay. Otherwise, you will be subject to all relevant sanctions. Okay. Now, just imagine what a sanction could be. If you do that in my course, first thing you'll do is you'll fail the course immediately. That's just the smallest part of it. You'll fail the course. You might be expelled from the program. And just imagine what a failure in a course, or much worse, expulsion from a course means for your career. McKinsey will never hire you. Goldman will never hire you. The Bank China will never hire you. You are forever unemployable at a top place. Is that something worth destroying your whole career, your whole life, out of a misguided sense of loyalty to your friends? Absolutely not. When you sign up for this course, this is the agreement that you and I are making, that if there is any violation, especially since this is an online course, we're having to rely upon each other to make sure everything goes perfectly. Then if you are in violation, or if you find anybody else is in violation, or if you suspect somebody is in violation, that needs to be taken care of by proper procedures immediately. Okay. All right. But having said that, I know this is not going to be an issue because you are students at an advanced course at a top university. So I'm positive we will not have any issues. But if there are, you need to let me know as soon as possible. Okay. If there are no further questions about the course, I will, about the overall structure of the course, I'm going to. So we don't have much time today. So what are markets? Why are we doing this? What exactly is the scope of finance or financial markets? So it's anytime they have a voluntary transaction that needs to have a willing and able buyer and a willing and able seller. In addition, for a transaction to be a market transaction, Some details are in public domain, for instance, prices and quantities. Okay. And what we will see is that there are these standardized rules, and anytime you have rules that can differ from domain to domain, from regime to regime, from time to time, those things changes. So, for instance, what are the reporting to be done in the market transaction? So, you have to information about trades, the participants, who when takes possession, how, when, in what form payments have to be made, all of that. So what then is what is the focus of finance? Finance is focused with capital markets. What is capital? Okay. So economics recognizes two broad categories of resources: labor and, well, capital. Labor and non-labor. So we can say we are the study of everything that is not labor. There are all resources that are not labor. So that's kind of a very broad stroke of everything capital. I'll let you read this this quote by Piketty in this classic book in 2014, became extremely popular. This fundamental inequality, which I will write as R greater than G, R stands for the average annual return on capital, and G stands for the rate of growth in the economy, sums up the overall logic of my conclusions. The idea is G is the annual increase for all resources. R is the annual increase, annual return for non-labor resources. And the point that he makes is that the reason for inequality, and for the inequality having grown remarkably over the last few hundred years, is because the returns to capital are far, far higher than returns on all resources. Okay, which of course means, just look at labor, then the returns to capital are substantially higher than the returns to labor. And so this is a kind of an interesting thing why for us to study. This is why this is so important for us. This is where the action is, so to speak. Valuation. I'm not going to talk about this a lot. So I'm just going to kind of just get you started thinking about it, and then we'll move on. The idea of a market capitalization, or market cap, is simply price times the shares outstanding. That's the market value of ownership. So think about this. Let's say, and this is the kind of examples where I really miss not being in an on-site class, because I would then talk to each of you and make examples of for each of you to work with. But let's say you have a firm which there is, and each share is $40 a share, and you have 100 shares. Okay, then what's the market value? What's the value of the ownership? 40 shares times 100 shares. So the market value of ownership is 40 times 100. Okay, that's the market cap. All right. Total enterprise value, TEV, which is often used, is the market cap plus debt plus everything else. That's the market value of the company, not of ownership, but of the company. And this comes from the idea that a firm can finance itself in essentially two ways: through equity or through debt. Okay, the market cap simply takes the equity into account, but the total enterprise value takes into account that the firm can finance itself through other factors as well. So that's the total enterprise value. The net asset value is something that is used a lot for mutual funds, for instance, which we will talk about not in a whole lot of detail later, as the market value of assets minus liabilities, okay, divided by shares outstanding. And this, as I said, it's used primarily for investment companies. It's to value each share. So it takes the liabilities out of the market value of assets. That's it. That's each of these valuations have their uses for different particular situations, and we will talk about them in various different contexts going forward. Okay, orders and quotes. So now, for actual well-functioning financial markets, so orders are somewhat public information. In particular, we can have, what the orders comes in bewildering varieties. In particular, the two, one is, let's say, the standard plain vanilla market order, where I call up my broker, Goldman Sachs, and say, buy me 1,000 shares of Microsoft. That's it. No other conditions to go with it. Limit order could be, buy me 1,000 shares of Microsoft if the price of Microsoft goes below $400 a share. That's a limit order. Or it could, the inequality could be reversed, a kind of a stop loss order. Sell 1,000 shares of Microsoft if the price goes below $400 a share. So that's the kind of situation where you're protecting yourself in case there is a run on the market. All right. So, and we will think in terms of how, thinking in terms of markets, it's all about the information that that the investors have that is so critical to a financial market. So now orders, this order that I place with Goldman, that's, only parts of it have to be disclosed to the market. The quotes, on the other hand, are public information. When Goldman sees all the, what we call its order book, all the orders that are coming in from various customers, the identities of the customers may not be available to even the regulators or to somebody who's doing the analysis of it, but the order book is only semi-public. The quotes, on the other hand, on the basis of its orders, it then places quotes, and the bid is how much a potential buyer is willing to pay. So when I say, when the Goldman's quote is saying that I am willing to pay $400 for each share of Microsoft, that's its bid. Okay. Ask is just the other side of it, how much a potential willing seller is willing to accept. Now, the thing to always keep in mind is, you might have many different bids at a particular point. The only thing that matters is the best bid is the highest bid. So for instance, let's say I'm selling a house, okay? So you have three people, X, Y, and Z, bidding for the house. One X bids 900,000, Y bids $1 million, Z bids 1.1 million. The only thing that matters, because I have that one house to sell, is the highest bid, $1.1 million. So the other bids are irrelevant. Okay, in this case of so in any situation of where the markets are clearing, the only bid that matters is the best bid at any point. And similarly, the best ask, which is, so highest bid is the best bid, the lowest ask is the best ask. And what the NBBO does is the best bid and ask across all markets. And I'll show you some examples in very short order. Bad use the word order, well, yeah, double meaning. And so but one of the things is, when a market maker poses a bid and ask, one is required to meet the NBBO, even if the market maker was not the one giving the NBBO. That is one of the protections that an investor has in US markets, is that the market maker has to do a transaction at the best price across all markets, even if the market maker itself was not the source of the particular bid. So I'm going to open up your the file that is marked number 1, MSFT quotes and files, trades and quotes. It's on Blackboard, number 1 file. And it's just taking a sample on a particular day of Microsoft and its various quotes and trades. So let's say starting at 10 o'clock, there's a bid of $110.01, ask of $110.04. So this market maker at Exchange K is willing to buy at $110.01, but is willing to accept $110.04 for anything it sells. And that is the fundamental rule of finance. Buy low, sell high. That's the idea of arbitrage. The rule of any economic activity. Buy low, sell high. That's how markets operate. And so you find a situation where you can get the same price for a object for a lower price. This difference, this bid-ask spread, is the profit of a particular player in any market. Okay, that's how this, in NASDAQ in particular, that's how a market maker makes its profit. Now, here, let's look at the various different. So, just look at the first one here. $110.01 it's asking for is the bid. $110.04 is the ask by exchange. And then K changes it very soon. Well, different quote, exactly the same actually, except that the bid size is changed. So similarly, now we see at almost exactly the same time. This is how today's finance markets, they're operating at exactly the same time. $110.02. It's willing to pay a higher price than K, and so on, goes up all the way. Now look at this, all this while we are still at the 10 o'clock mark. The highest out of all these is $110.02. This here, rows 22 and 23 are about the trades that occur. Okay, so the trade size here is at almost at exactly the same time, is at $110.02. So the best bid has to be respected. Okay, so that's the idea. So this is, we are doing, tick by tick during the course of one day, everything quotes coming in, and the trade has to be at, an investor is protected by the trade being meeting the best bid among all markets. So now we don't know from here. Let me just highlight this for a second. So let's look at K. Okay, so all this time, as we can see, K has 11, 10, 1 cent, and so on. And then finally it does say $110.02, but it brings it down to $110.01. So its prevailing quote is $110. Prevailing bid is, so a market maker is constantly updating its. That's how you you can have these quotes even without any transaction happening. That's just saying this is how much I, as the market maker K, is bidding for this particular security. So $110.01. Now, just imagine for a second, we don't have this data because this, this is, if we had a different data called the Equity Trade Journal data, that would actually tell us who participated on both sides of this particular trade. We don't have that data. All we know is this is actually two different data sets that I have merged using SAS to look at this data. So if it is indeed K, then the trade is occurring at $110.02. So because there are other market makers, let's say look at over here, that have bid $110.02, for K to fulfill this transaction, it has to meet that $110.02. Okay, it has to pay at least $110.02 for that particular object. Okay, now this is for a NASDAQ market, which is where you have multiple market makers, and this is the example that I wanted to show you because it's much more fascinating. And there are other markets like the New York Stock Exchange. They operate on what is referred to as a specialist market. There is this one firm that makes a market for each particular stock on the New York Stock Exchange. And how does a specialist make its money? Through commissions on each trade. All right. On the NASDAQ, the bid-ask spread is how a market maker makes money in that particular market for that particular security. Okay, so I want to quick. Okay, so orders and quotes we've talked a little bit about. Valuation and price. Okay, no, individual I or investor I's valuation is the price at which investor I is indifferent between buying, holding, or selling. Okay, that is not public information. Okay, how much you value it at is quite different than what you might quote. So for instance, let's say when you are going to buy a house, okay, you're what you're valuing it, let's say you want to buy a house and you're valuing it at, let's say, $1.2 million. That's the price at which you're, indifferent between buying, selling, or holding. Okay, that's the max. In particular, that is the maximum price you're willing to pay for it. But are you going to say that? Do you have to disclose that to anybody? No. In particular, you might behave strategically and not disclose it. Okay, so the price, on the other hand, is the dollar figure at which willing and able buyers and willing and able sellers transact. That price is, for most financial transactions, public information. Even for real estate, for instance, if you want to find out the price that we paid for our home in Montgomery County, it's publicly available on public domain. So that's public information. All right. Similarly, if you want to look at every single security, every price at which every single security was traded, that's public information. You can look at it intraday trades and quotes data, or you can look at it daily data, for instance, with CRISP, as I have showed you, and that's true of secure equities, fixed income securities, derivatives, options, futures, all of the above, and even much more complicated projects. Okay, so that's just some technical terms. Buying is also called going long or taking a long position. And selling is also called going short or taking a short position. Now, can you go net negative? Can you take a negative net position? That is to say, can you sell more than what you have? Let's say you have 1,000 shares of Microsoft. Is that a limit? Does it mean that you can only sell 1,000 shares? Or can you sell 2,000 shares? That means to say you have 1,000 shares, but you sell 2,000 shares, which means your inventory is now negative 1,000. Is that possible? Yeah, that's called a short sale, where the only way to do it is for you to borrow from somebody in order to sell it. And these short sales costs and constraints is something that actually I've done a lot of research on. A lot of my work actually focuses on this. It's a fascinating aspect of all this. And Tesla, for instance, Elon Musk gets into these regular fights with short sellers on exactly these issues. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so those are, we talk about valuation. Trades, on the other hand, can be categorized on different characteristics depending on who's taking the risk. So the equity trade journal data, which we're not going to get into, which is a bit too, but that's something, if you were working on a regulatory matter, you would have access to that data. It's available through, it tells you what the, not only for each trade, it tells you whether that trade was done as an by a market maker, as an agent, or as a principal. Okay, now what's an agency trade? When I, for instance, am you place an order with me, and I simply go to the market and match a buy order and a sell order, okay, without me being involved in any of the risk of the trade, that's an agency trade. Okay, that's purely matching orders that are available. Okay, that's an agency trade. A principal trade is where you ask me to buy 1,000 shares of Microsoft, I sell you from my inventory. I'm the market maker, I sell you from my inventory. Okay, that's a principal share or a proprietary transaction. Okay, now most of the action, that's where these market makers make most of their money from actually these principal transactions, these proprietary transactions. So as a result, there are all kinds of restrictions of what a market maker can do. These are restrictions by the financial regulators in the US. So in particular, one, for instance, is the overall idea is everything that can be done must be done in order to protect an investor, the investors, and the investor community, as they say. So the idea is, if orders can be matched, they should be matched before a market maker makes a transaction on its own account. Okay, so so these investigations that have often been done, trading ahead, which is all of these kind of have variants of those. Is if there is a buy order on this side, there is a sell order on this side. If I can match them, I must. If I interposition myself between the two, so that is to say, there's a buy order on this side, there's a sell order. So I fulfill the buy order by selling from my account and fulfill the sell order by buying on my account. Then I have interposed myself into that transaction. Okay, and that would be a violation. Because yes, remember, in no risk, I am bearing the risk of that each of those transactions may not actually happen, but that's where I can only do so if I can that there are no orders that can be matched in agency trades. Okay, so returns. So let's look at all right, the number 2 Excel file on your Blackboard account is 1999 data for Walmart. Okay, so let me quickly. So the capital gains from 0 to T plus 1 is simply you bought at P naught, you sold it at PT plus 1. This difference, PT plus 1 minus P naught, is the capital gains you made. The rate, normalize it by what you paid for this. This is the percentage number. That is the capital gains rate. Okay. This thing here, we'll see this PT plus 1 minus P naught divided by P naught is can be approximated by log PT plus 1 minus log PT. And this is something we'll use over and over again. We'll once we are past equities, we'll find ourselves using this continuously compounded, the logarithmic approach, because it has some very good properties, which lets us deal with all kinds of negative numbers and all that. It's just, and also because of the fact that with stocks, because there are, go back 20 years, there were these overwhelming majority of the transactions were during the trading day from 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. That's gone down tremendously. And so this continuously compounded. So it gets compounded even when the market is not active. For fixed income securities, for instance, if you borrow money from somebody, that the interest accumulates only also on days in which that particular security is not traded. All right. So so this is the capital gains from this. We're going to that tend to be very similar, except for large movements. Well, that's the nature of approximation. All right. So now is this idea of splits or reverse splits. Let's look at, and I'm going to introduce this idea by looking at exact examples. Okay. So this is for 1999 Walmart data. This is the name of the stores. Dividend per share. Let's look at. So what are the dividends you have? On March 17th, there was a 10 cents per share dividend. Looking at the green highlighted rows, on May 16th, 1999, there was a 5 cents per share dividend, and September 15th, 5 cents per share, and then December 15th, another 5 cents per share. Okay, these were the dividends that were paid for Walmart equity in those days. All right, let's look at price. price is $80.06. They're going along, in the 80s. Yeah, going along in the 90s. Well, look what happened here. It went from $89 on 419 to $47 on 420. Almost exactly half. You learn when you're doing finance work is to kind of, anything that is suspicious needs to be investigated. That seems suspicious. Remember, doesn't mean that you say it's wrong, or to say that it just means it needs more investigation. All right. So it just seems like too convenient to just have, right? So then you look at this cumulative factor. What this cumulative factor data, this is from CRISP data, that tells you that whether there was a split or a reverse split in that stock on that particular day. So what happened on April 20th is that the stock split. That is to say, on March 20th, everybody who owned a share in Walmart was told, you now have 2 shares in Walmart. Exactly the same company, exactly, the economics of it were exactly the same. All right, going back to our old firm where we were saying each share is $40, you have 100 shares. Now we said, instead of breaking it into 100 shares, we're now going to break it up into 200 shares. The overall economics remain completely unaffected, right? So it's simply, if you multiply the number of shares by 2, then the price gets divided by 2. That's as simple as that. So you take that price and you see, so this cumulative factor is a data field that is provided to us by Chris, which allows us to look at and say, aha, look at this. The price, the cumulative factor went from 2 to 1. That is to say, on this, you can look at it and say, yes, this particular day, there was a split in the stock. So what we then do is to say, we divide, and what the split adjustment, what we usually do is we keep. So look, you can either, the point is, in order for us to compare rows 74 and 75, they have to be brought to a common adjustment. Okay, either you adjust the future or you adjust the price, what we passed. So what we usually do is, as we keep the current price of the latest prices as observed, and adjust the past prices. So in particular, we say, so 89.75, we're going to divide that by this 2. So now we have divided it by this cumulative factor. So now, therefore, the adjusted price here, $44.0875, is now comparable to this adjusted price in row 75. The adjusted price on row 74 is comparable, not the same, comparable to the adjusted price on the row 74. This here is the split adjusted price that we get as a result of this. So what we have done here is we're taking every day of the price, looking at the observed price, dividing it by this cumulative factor in column M to get we should really call it split adjusted price. Okay, so that is the split adjusted price. Market cap is simply price times shares outstanding. So this is equal to E2 times G2, which is the shares outstanding, gives you the market cap. All right. Now, as long as you're consistent, it doesn't matter which one you're dividing it by. You just have to be very careful. Because anytime there's a split in prices, then if the price halves, that's because the shares have doubled. All right. So the product has to be the same, because the economics of it are only through the market value of the shares. So that's why the market cap is purely, as long as you have to be consistent. You make sure you cannot multiply the adjusted price with the unadjusted share price. You can multiply adjusted with adjusted or unadjusted with unadjusted. They will always be the same. Okay, so capital gains is the split adjusted price um, minus F3 minus F2 divided by F2. Okay, that gives you the capital gains that we populate throughout the rest of this column. All right. Now, what happens on these green days? In addition to owning the shares, in addition to the capital gains, on those days you are actually, for each share you own on that particular day, you are getting 10 cents per share. So for those days, therefore, you have the dividend yield is D52 divided by E52. Now remember, the dividend is being paid on the share you own on the day of the dividend. So you divided not by the adjusted price, but by the actual price. Once again, you just have to think things through. Okay, there is no alternative for thinking. You know, if you're not thinking, then you're an unthinking robot, and your job will go in the next couple of years. They'll be taken over by a computer. The only value add that you have that is sustainable in today's modern, fast-paced world is to think. That's the only human quality. So you need to be able to think very, very carefully. So you add on this dividend yield, which the dividend yield is the dividend divided by E51, the price at that particular day, not the adjusted, the actual price. All right, so this here, so column I gives you the capital gains, capital J gives you the dividend yield. So the daily return then is equal to capital gains plus dividend yield, which is what we showed in this slide. So the daily return is equal to the sum of those. Okay. So what we often will typically want to know it in percent. So in order to get the daily return, to get it in percent, you multiply it by 100. So then if somebody asks, what was the daily return on January 5th, 1999, the answer is 0.78%. But in finance, because the percentage, the return typical numbers are so much lower, what we often do is discuss them in basis points. Each basis point is 1/100th of a percent. So in order to express that in basis points, you take the daily return in percent, multiply that by a further 100. Okay, so then the question becomes, if somebody asks you what was the return on January 5th, 1999, the answer then is 78 basis points. So let's look at what is the lowest return we have is negative 568 basis points. And so on April 14th, 1999, the daily return was negative 5.68%, which made it a daily return of 568 basis points. Okay, what is the highest? Let's look at the so on October 8th, 1999, the daily return was 7.92%, which then is 792 basis points on that particular day. One thing that we always will like to do anytime we do this is make sure we understand what what the summary statistics are. So the average return is 0.025%, which in percent is 0.24%. In basis points, the average return in basis points is 24.64 basis points. So the average return for 1999 for Walmart stock is 24 basis points, which is equal to 0.24%. Okay, volatility will, this will be a good place for me to just say, instead of volatility, just say it's a standard deviation. So the standard deviation of Walmart stocks in 1999 was 245 basis points. all right, or 2.45%. That's the standard deviation of all these return numbers. Okay, and very soon we will discuss that the standard deviation of returns is what we call volatility in finance, and we'll see how it all fits in with what we have discussed. But let me just quickly go back to the slides we just walked through. This PT plus 1 is adjusted for splits and reverse splits. And then the holding period return, which in our case, I just showed you how you would do it. Holding period, if you were holding it for 1 day, is the capital gains during that period plus the dividend yield. So, think of it as an investment rental property. Your return is the sequence of rents you receive during the time you hold the property, and the appreciation is the capital gains. So sequence of dividend yields of the rents you get plus the capital gains appreciation of at the end of this. All right. So now, so first thing to keep in mind is we don't actually, all these calculations that we went through for Walmart, you don't actually have to do it for CRISP data or for Yahoo data. The returns are, CRISP actually calculates these returns for you. So that is one of the greatest things. Very clean. It captures for all splits, reverse splits, dividends, etc. So the daily return is reported on CRISP for you. Now I'll leave you with this final thought. Why do firms split anyway? Okay. In particular, let's look at Walmart's that yellow highlighted row. It went from 490 on April 19th, trading at $89 to April 20th, trading at $47. Remember, the economics of it have remained exactly the same. The split simply makes the price of each share, which is now half of the previous day's share, trade at half. It has changed nothing of the economics of it, of the real part of it. Yeah. Why do splits happen? I mean, and the reason is that $89 can be a high price to pay if there is no way to buy half a share. Right? If you can only buy multiples of one share, if there's no such thing as half a share, then you have to buy in multiples of $89. All right. So like Berkshire Hathaway has never split in its whole career, whole life, and we should look at the data. And as a result, its shares sell at about $200,000 each share of $200,000. So if you could only bear and buy in whole numbers, then the minimum amount you would have to invest in Berkshire Hathaway was $200,000. And as a result, they grew this enormous market of people wanting to, gain favors and so on and so forth. All right. Now, but what has happened? So this is, older date, but now we don't really see that many splits anymore because there has emerged this whole financial engineering world where you can buy 1/10 of a share if you want to, at a premium, of course, if you want to. All right. So, the idea of splitting was to make your shares affordable to smaller investors who could only buy in multiples of one share. But now, since that's no longer a major issue, where for a small premium you can buy 1/1,000,000th of a share if you want to, then there is really not that much of a rationale for stocks splitting anymore. And we really don't observe that many splits. The reverse splits is actually a bit of a mind game because a stock that goes below $1 is called a penny stock, and a lot of times they are actually removed from active trading on the major markets. They become what are called pink sheet stocks. So a firm will reverse split, which is just the opposite of a split. Instead of a split is when we say one stock is now equal to 2 stocks. Reverse split is what used to be 10 stocks is now 1 stock. So do a reverse split 10 to 1. That's to in a reverse split, the price will be, if it's a reverse split at a 2-to-1 ratio, then the price after the split, after the reverse split, will be exactly 2 times what it was before. And that's always a way of trying to make the share price look better than it actually is, because the only thing to remember is the share price in returns are what matter. The actual level of a stock price means nothing, okay? Because you can have all these splits and reverse splits. But having said that, splits and reverse splits have become very rare because of the enormous development in financial markets, in particular by being able to buy fractions of stocks than fractions of securities, really, than we used to. All right, I'm going to stop right here, and we are going to finish off the rest of the overview next week. If you have any questions, please do email me, and we'll take it from there. In particular, in the next couple of days, we'll make a decision on how to make things most fair for everybody in terms of the timing, and how best to adjust the deliverables and everything else to go with that. So this has been a very interesting lecture for me, given that I've not been able to hear from any of you. And we'll take it from there. Hope you have a great week, and we'll talk soon.